Alright, so today we're reviewing the Intermountain HO Scale Union Pacific TTGX Autorack. Basically, they're designed to carry cars inside. But yeah, let's get started here in the front. Alright, so in the front we have some double doors to access the interior to load up the cars. The top is painted white and the bottom is painted yellow. And this is because it's an excess height car. Then we have some grab irons, some holes in the middle and on the sides, red painted door handles, and some writing. It says close and lock doors before moving the car. And you can also see all the rivets molded in. And the text is quite legible. Then at the bottom we have this coupler cut lever, and there are two grab irons above, and it's using a metal Katy knuckle coupler. Now the coolest thing about this car is that you can actually open up the doors. So on the inside you can see there's two levels, so it's a bi-level and there are railings in the floors. So if you wanted to, you could fill this up with cars. And the inner walls are also see-through, so you can see through to the other side. And there also is cross bracing right there, which isn't on the other side. And hanging from the ceiling we have some plastic bits, which they haven't cut off all the way from the sprue. And we have some support anchors on the sides. And there's a look at the other door. Yeah, to open this, the doors are pretty stiff. You can see this plastic bit wraps around it and also runs on this curved rail on the floor. There is a hole on the second floor, which if you look at real life pictures of Autoracks, it doesn't seem to be there. So I think they just made it like this to make inserting the doors much easier. Now to close the door, you can just go in the back of this and push. It is a little bit finicky and doesn't really move too smooth, but if you do get stuck, just push it from the top section. And there is these big gaping holes in the front corners. Alright, so in the corner we have this grab iron ladder with some small text talking about the deck clearance, and this warning label which you can't really read, which is also on the other side, and it says no coupling more than 4 miles per hour. You have to go pretty slow. Then at the bottom we have a stirrup step, and from the side you can see the two hinges for the door, and small printed text with molded in detail. And behind this you can actually see there is an opening in the doorway. Now it does have these pretty cool see-through etched metal panels with 3 bars on the sides, which have a nice sheen, and these are actual holes so you can see through them, and it allows light to pass through. Then down below we have some more labels, like the jacking point here, and there is the truck, a pretty simple design, and you can barely make out there's this yellow FRA stripes, which I didn't even know it existed. It's honestly pretty hard to tell it's there though. Then we have some pillars that go all along the car, although they're not all equidistant, and they have triangles at the base of them, and there are pegs at the top that hold in the panels. Then we have the iconic Union Pacific shield logo, looks pretty crisp, and then here it says Building America, which is their motto, and this part doesn't have the holes like on the bottom. Then down below we have TTGX and the car number, and you can see that ribbing at the bottom. Now on the other side we have some more text. It's for restricted loading only, and apparently it's a Bethlehem steel Autorack, and it's using the older TTX Speedlines logo. Then we have the COT stencil and some more writing, and on this side there's actually like a little chart showing the dimensions. And here's a look at the other end. It's pretty much the exact same thing. So this side of the car is different from the other side because it has this air reservoir tank at the bottom, which actually connects all the way to the handbrake on the side. It is pretty well detailed with this chain going up to the handbrake. Alright, so now let's go check out the roof. So on top we have this nice silver metallic texture, and if you look closely you can see some rivet lines that go all the way across. And now here's a look at the bottom. You can see on the ends we have a bunch of screws here, and the truck is pretty simple and bare bones. Apparently it comes from AccuRail. And I've also noticed that if you look at the top section versus the bottom section, they're actually using 2 different yellows. The bottom is a lighter shade, so kind of like a highlighter yellow, while the top is a bit darker. Then at the bottom you can see these triangular ribs that go across. They have holes in it. There is that molded in air line here, and this separately applied piece, and then it looks up to the rest of the air brake system. Mainly everything's on the same side, and there's actually this hole in the spine where the brake lever is, and there's the other end. And I should note there is a bit of a hue issue, which you can see this greenish hue. Probably there's a hole or there's a screw behind it, and the flooring yellow has a bit of a greenish tint to it, so maybe they didn't apply enough paint. I think the reason why these doors always fall out in the packaging is that there's nothing really on the end of the railing to stop it, and this little bit is loose. Alright, so now we're taking a look at the BNSF Autorack. And again, let's start here in the front. So this comes in this orange livery and got the FRA stripes at the bottom and white grab irons. A lot of markings are the same, but this one says it's a seal-safe radial door. Now when you are opening the doors, you have to make sure the hinge goes in the hole. This one's a bit crooked. There we go. And here's what it looks like inside. It's pretty much the same thing. And then on the side, we have some different text printing, talking about ownership and the car number. And then on the bottom, we have the yellow FRA stripes. On this one, it's much better contrast and lots of legible tiny text. Then moving further down along, it says R1. Let me know if you guys know what this stands for. So more printing here. And then we have the BNSF swoosh logo. It seems like they make a solid panel for any logos. And then down at the bottom, we have the modern red TTGX logo and some more detailing. And then here's a look at the end. Again, it's pretty much the same thing. And just like the Union Pacific Autorack, the only difference is the air tank and the handbrake on the side. And in the corners, there are the 3 points of contact safety warning label there. And then here's a look at the roof. And then here's the bottom. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just orange. Now here are both cars side by side. As you can see, this label is not present. And the color of the grab irons are different as well. And there is one panel that actually sticks out and doesn't really go in. And I actually have the same exact issue with the Union Pacific Autorack in the same exact position. So I also bought my Scaletrains Rivet Counter Autorack. These two are based on 2 different designs, but they are both Union Pacific. I do feel like the Intermountain one, this is the one you'll see a lot more common on the road. Of course, this one's cool because it has those openable doors. While on Scaletrains, it's just solid, you can't actually open it. And the whole thing is sealed up. While on Intermountain, you'll see that gap, which actually does exist in real life, although it's not that big. You can see they are using different couplers. Scaletrains has this brown semi-scale coupler, which is a long shank, while Intermountain's using a standard Katy coupler with a really wide coupler box. Compare that with Scaletrains, which is more realistic looking. And they also have the train line detail underneath, which is not present on Intermountain. Then here are them side by side, definitely different designs. Even the Union Pacific logos, like this one has a white outline, and the Building America's to the side while this one's underneath. Also, the TTGX car numbers have different fonts, so Scaletrains is a bit more stretched out. Also, they are using different yellows. Intermountain's a bit duller yellow, while Scaletrains has a lighter shade. And both cars do have these see-through etched metal holes, but on Scaletrains it's much smaller, and you can't really see anything past it because there's a wall blocking it. Scaletrains also has rotating bearing caps and a stencil on the truck, while Intermountain doesn't have those features. Now both Autoracks do have those similar handbrakes on the sides. Scaletrains does have a more realistic and refined molding with holes in the chains, while on Intermountain's a bit rough and there are no holes. Alright, so for the roofs, on Intermountain it goes all the way to the edge, while on Scaletrains there is a yellow bumper. Both cars do have those rivet detailing on the tops, but they do have different roof textures. The Intermountain's a bit of a lighter tinny texture, while Scaletrains is painted darker. It does feel a bit more premium than Intermountain's, which does look like metal, but it's like a kind of cheaper style of metal. You can see on Intermountain's it's more of a grainy texture, while on Scaletrains it's pretty smooth and uniform. Intermountain also has these tiny little dents where the pillar meets the roof, and it makes a subtle ridge over here, though it's very small, like you're not going to really notice it. Scaletrains, however, does not have this issue whatsoever. So now let's compare the bottoms of the cars. Intermountain's the top one, and you can see there's just so many screws that go across in the middle and on the edges. While on Scaletrains, it's pretty clean, like you only see like 2 of them per side. It does have this hanging brake rod detail on the end, and brake beams in the truck, which are not present on Intermountain's. Another thing are the FRA stripes. It's practically invisible on Intermountain's. Just yellow on yellow, it doesn't look good. While on Scaletrains, there is a much better contrast. Despite being yellow on yellow, it's clearly visible. And even on the operator version, it's just so much more easier to see, and I think that's the whole point of FRA safety stripes. But the one thing Intermountain does do better is the car body wobble. There is practically none on both cars. While on Scaletrains, it does wobble quite a bit, and that goes for both cars. But yeah, let's go run some trains. So the problem with this is that when it goes back this way, it derails because this truck doesn't have the range of motion to turn the other way. As you can see, when I flip it around, it does work properly, so I learned the angle of the car has to match the angle of the switch. So to properly multi-track drift, I'm going to change the switch with one going the opposite direction. Now, unfortunately, I cannot fit any of my road vehicles inside the Autorack because it just doesn't fit trucks. I actually do have a 3D printed Humvee, and it actually does fit Humvees in real life, but because it has these side view mirrors that stick out and they can't fold, I can't actually fit it in. So this is the best we can do. Kinda is a funny look, but yeah, it definitely can fit a Humvee if you just didn't have those mirrors. Alright, so for my final thoughts, the Intermountain Autoracks, they look pretty great with their etched metal see-through panels. Their cool unique feature of openable doors, lots of tiny text with printing, which is still legible. It has a nice metallic sheen, and it's a great roller. And most importantly, it's capable of multi-track drifting. However, for the cons, there are some drawbacks for functional doors. A lot of people will warn you, and even Intermountain themselves mentioned the doors are fragile. And it is pretty true. Even before I opened the packaging, the doors were already falling off their hinges in both cars, and 2 of these pieces fell off. On the bright side, it's relatively easy to fix and glue back together since it's on pegs. Another issue I had was one of the couplers of the Union Pacific Autorack was laying off to one side, so if that happens, you can actually unscrew the bottom and the floor can pivot so you can recenter the coupler. They also don't bother to remove the sprues on the ceiling of the car. Also, the Union Pacific Autorack had low-hanging couplers, so the trip pins would snag on the 90-degree crossing. Also, I noticed this car had pretty dirty wheels, which I don't blame on Intermountain because it's actually quite rare to see in a brand new model, so I wondered if someone returned this item or it was in storage for a long time with that hole in the box. The BNSF one also had this one dirty wheel, but it turned out to be more of a staining in the metal. But overall, I would still recommend this car because they did a pretty good job getting all the essential details. I bought this from Otter Valley Railroad, which is the first time I'm ordering from Canada where you're paying Canadian dollars. It's one of the only places where they actually still have these in stock. The only other place is eBay, and it turned out to be cheaper than that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, hit that like button down below, leave a comment if you guys have any thoughts, subscribe if you hadn't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.